inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Being a kingdom-driven entrepreneur is not the same thing as being a Christian who happens to be a business owner. A kingdom-driven entrepreneur is motivated by seeing an increase of the kingdom of God through the work that they do in business. And they are propelled forward in business by operating from the truth of Matthew 6 and verse 33. They seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, knowing that all things will be added. So that is why we are here, and I'm super grateful that you have joined us today. Today's sponsor is one of our kingdom-driven entrepreneur certified service providers, Kelly Botter. If your coaching or service-based business revenue is growing, but you know it's time to level up your messaging and revenue to the six-figure level and beyond this year, and more importantly, you have the heart to make a difference in your industry and steward a specific message that God has given you, I encourage you to check out the Power of One framework. The Power of One framework equips you to achieve these results by aligning you with your God-given identity and in-season assignments, mastering and articulating your program value, establishing your preeminent positioning, and launching your flagship offer with strategic organic content. To receive your complimentary business assessment to see where the gap is between where you are now and where you want to achieve, visit Kelly's website at powerofoneframework.com/benchmark. Now to today's guest. My guest today is a dear friend of mine, David Burrus. He's a man of many hats, including but not limited to author, speaker, coach, and the founder of Activate Nation. I've had the privilege of watching his journey over the last decade, and I asked him to join me because I believe there's a lot of goodness in his testimony that listeners can relate to. You'll hear David refer to it as catching up to his purpose. We talk about how David discovered that his ministry call as a pastor was meant to be expressed in the marketplace versus the four walls of the church. And you'll hear him candidly share about some of the growth pains he's experienced moving from solopreneur to CEO level leadership. This is a rich chat between friends, and I believe you'll be blessed by it. So I'm going to get out of the way, listen in, and enjoy this conversation with David Burrus. David Burrus, my brother, how are you?
Hey, Shay. I like to call you Shannon, but for the sake of this conversation, I'll call you Shay.
Burrus, giving away my government name. There have only been two people who have done this on this podcast. It was you and, of course, our friend, Dr. Tony Robinson.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. You guys are brats. I love it, though, and I love you guys.
Yep.
So I was looking it up, and the last time that you were on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, you've been on twice. The last time was in April of 2016.
It's crazy.
And the time before that was back in 2013 after, remember the book, The Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur's Guide to Extraordinary Leadership. It was right after the release of that book, or right around the time. So we go back a long time. We go back before Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. We go back to when I was doing good faith investing real estate blog and chasingyourfreedom.com.
Yeah. That's when I hit you. It was like, hey, I need more money. Can you help me get more money?
But you know what you also said to me way back then?
What?
Which I had really no greater context for.
I remember.
You remember? Like, what did you say?
Yo, this is ministry.
Yeah, I didn't even know what you're talking about, bro. Like that was before Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur was a thing. And it was even before God was even talking to me about it being a thing. Here's the thing,
Shay, I don't know what I ate for dinner yesterday, but I do remember telling you that was ministry. I can't remember what I did last week, but I remember telling you, yo, this is ministry.
Which is so funny because I've never really looked at my work that way. It's just interesting how these things go down. Anyway, so welcome back. You're a three-time returning guest that most people have no idea that you were a guest before because it was 5 years ago.
No idea. No clue. That means I'm family. We grew up together.
That's right. We are family. And I've been really looking forward to having you back and talking about, because I have the benefit of being, since we're friends, like I have a sense of kind of the journey over the years of all the goodness that you've been up to. And so I want to explore just your story and just your partnership with God, learning how to work in the rhythms of his grace instead of grinding it out and all the goodness and see what this is looking like. So let's start first by just at least tell people, like, now, what are you doing right now?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on. I want to start there. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is what we call the Activate Nation. The Activate Nation. And the word activate was into the word act. So we started this thing called the David Burrus Academy. And I've named it that because I didn't know what to name it. Little history. So I got laid off from my job in the pandemic, and I was like, I'm not going on another job interview. So I was like, I have a following. I'm just going to start something and ask people to follow me. So I started it, and I didn't know what to call it because it was just, we were crunched for time and I needed income. So I said, it's just the David Burrus Academy, and I'm going to teach people relationships. And it's been almost 2 years now. And we've recently changed the name to the Activate Nation for two reasons. Number one, we want to see people activated. Number two, we are a nation of people, right? We're believers. We're a royal priesthood. We're a holy nation. So that's what we're doing now. We're excited. We're seeing people identify purpose and live it out.
Yeah.
And then we're equipping them to also do purposeful relationships. So we were kind of talking about this offline, Shay. All the stuff you've seen me do and help me do, right? Coach me through. We put it all in one box, and we're getting it done now.
So yeah, because if we think about this, you started off when I first met you. First of all, you were there's the whole pastoring a church.
That's a whole nother conversation.
There's a whole pastoring a church thing that was going down.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about leadership.
Yeah.
And then you began to really talk about purpose.
Yes.
And then you were really beginning to talk about relationships. It seemed at first that you were really talking to singles about relationship. And then you were talking to both singles and married folks around relationships. And then you were talking to people, it was around activating dreams, like entrepreneurial dreams, because I saw you kind of coaching people. So you have been building for years to the moment of right now.
Yes. Yeah. You know what's interesting, Shay, is even when I think about you and I, our journey together, and writing a book with KDE, what I realized in this moment, I hadn't thought about this, but God was really, and I learned a lesson today that God can deal with you even prophetically around your purpose.
Yeah.
And here's why I say that. I was writing books and teaching things that I hadn't walked out yet. Right. And so he was giving me wisdom. I had a little insight, but not the insight. Like I wouldn't have written a book had I known that I didn't know.
Listen, I get that.
You understand? Like, there's no way I would have written any book. I've written a few books that I had no idea what I was talking about. I thought I did. Right. Until now. And I realized.
See, you're saying that, but you did know something. See, this is the thing. You didn't know what you know now.
Yeah.
But you did know something.
I knew something.
And he had you release it at that time on purpose. So it's like, I think about Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. It's a community movement that started with a book about a topic on a phrase that I didn't even know what that is.
Yes.
So he will do that. It's like, he doesn't do that with everybody, but he will do that.
He'll do it. He'll send your purpose ahead of you. Right. He'll say, now put this out there and just send it out there, and then you'll catch up to it. Yes. Right.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. I want the listeners to know that you don't have to know what you're doing to do it. You really don't.
Thank God we're partnering with the one who does know what he's doing.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes you have to catch up to your purpose.
Yes. Wow. Now, so talk to me about this, because just kind of the behind the scenes of what was going on with you kind of internally and your growth personally in God along the way. Mm-hmm. Because I remember I remember saying to you for years, I see you as a giant. I remember when I first met you and I was shocked to see your height because I'm like, no, I've seen you and you were like 6 feet. You're over 6 feet tall. And I always saw you as a giant.
Yeah.
But inside you were working through layers and layers of stuff to be able to show up and have there be an alignment between how you were seeing you internally, how God was seeing you, and how others saw you. So talk to me about that part of your growth, because all of that was required for what you're doing now.
Well, first of all, Shay, you have the grace to call out of people this conversation is. I'm saying things I've never said before. And as you're talking, I'm thinking things I've never thought before. Okay. So let me put this on the table. I started out really insecure. And then even being in KDE, you put a battery in my back, right? Like, nah, dude, you can do it. I see you as a giant. Now, only to the listeners, I'm only 5'6", 5'7" with Timberlands on. Right? So I wear Timbs a lot. But you helped me realize, nah, dude, you're actually a giant. Cool. So I caught up to the word Shay gave me, like, you're a giant. I felt like a giant. Now here's what's happening now in my life. Doors are opening for me where I'm in the room with giants I've admired from afar. And now I feel like a mouse again. Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm in the middle of that same conversation. Like, nah, dude, you're a giant. Like, you belong in the room, right? You have something to say.
Yeah.
So that's where I am today. I'm a giant who feels like a mouse.
We go from one level of glory to the next, right? And so it's at a new thing. And then so you kind of have some familiar things that you're working through again, but you're still not going backwards. You're still forward.
Still moving forward. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. Walking in rooms and having conversations as I walk through the door, like, no, you belong here, you belong here, you belong here. Right. So even to the listeners, I just want you to know you belong in the room.
Yeah. That's so good. How did you process through the pastoring thing? I know you said that's a whole nother conversation, but it's actually a conversation for today too, because I think that there's a lot of listeners who kind of deal with the tension of a sense of a call for ministry and then trying to figure out what that looks like, having something on the inside that feels really different from something that's traditional that they're used to seeing, but just kind of working through that. So how did you navigate that, or how are you even currently navigating that as well? The pastoral call in your life as it relates to the things that he has you showing up with in the marketplace, and reconciling that with maybe either some of your past or even some of your thoughts over the future of local pastoral ministry type stuff.
Yeah. So I'm going to put a statement on the table and I'll unpack it. I am more of a pastor today with no title than I've ever been with a title, right? I have tried to start 2 churches and they just bombed. Couldn't get people to show up, couldn't get a leadership team, couldn't get a core group. So I said, all right, well, I'm just going to do marketplace, right? I'm just going to start a business. And this thing has turned into a church. These people call me their pastor, some of them. I now pastor pastors. So in this community, there are people who have ministry gifts and no covering.
Yeah.
So we've launched the Activate Network where I pastor pastors. So I actually stumbled into something and I was done with it, right? I was like, I'll never pass. I'll never even try that thing again. And so we moved into it. So it's been a transition. And now I have to look at it and say, okay, this is so much different. And I'm having to grasp what pastoring really means for me. Mid-pandemic, no walls.
Yes.
And it looks so much more like the church today than I've ever seen before. This is the church, what I'm doing now.
I love it.
Yeah.
So talk to me more about that. So what does this look like really practically, you as a pastor in the marketplace with the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So on a practical level, I meet with people Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 5 p.m. until we leave. generally 5 p.m. Pacific. It's generally, we have been there for 4 hours.
This is your team?
No, so we have a group of about 300 people.
Okay.
So Activate Nation is about 300 people.
Okay.
Generally about 100 people show up on a Zoom, and I just teach on Mondays, Wednesdays, and we have prayer and Bible study on Fridays.
Okay.
We're teaching biblical principles for life success. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's church.
Yeah.
Right. We're praying weekly. That's a church. Right. And we find ourselves even lifting our hands and crying out before the Lord. It's a church. But then we're talking about, okay, so now this is how you run a social media platform.
Right.
This is how you post. Like, if you're going to go live, this is how you go live. So it's a weird, I can't even, right? It's like a kingdom-driven entrepreneur type thing.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah. So it's weird. I
love it. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially pastoring 300 people right now and growing.
300 people. When a few years ago, I couldn't get 3 people to show up. Right?
You had coffee shop, church. Listen, you've had all kinds of iterations. Serving at a church, alongside another pastor. There was many iterations of your pastoring in local church, and even like, well, let me break out of the walls of the church and do this in the coffee shop. And it was still like, no, none of those things were the things for you.
Enjoy the coffee though.
Yeah,
right?
Great coffee, right?
Great coffee. No people. So this is it. And so, it's been good. It's been a journey. One of the things I am challenged by, Shay, is I wake up most mornings asking God, when is this going to fall apart? Because it's so unreal. I literally get to do what I love doing every single day of my life.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I get paid to do it.
Yes. I get to do this, and I get to get paid to do this.
I get to do this. And I get paid to do it.
Yeah. That's the best.
Yeah. And I've never made more money than I'm making right now, doing what I love to do.
It's the alignment of all the things that God has placed in your heart over these years. I mean, think about, let's see. So I've known you since, I guess, if Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur started in 2012, then I've known you at least since 2010, 2011, maybe 2011 or something.
Yeah, at least 2011. We'll say 2011. Right?
Yeah. And so for a decade, and it's like all of these pieces coming together in such a beautiful way. Now, let's talk about this aspect, because a lot of times you were doing things solo. I don't know whether that was by design by you because you didn't want to work with other people, or you felt like you couldn't work with other people, or whatever. But I'm curious to know about your journey and growth and shifting from working solo to really saying, in order to do this thing that I see, it's going to take collaboration, it's going to take a team, and making that transition.
I'm going to keep pointing back to KDE, right? This is such an amazing platform, and I just love what you guys are doing. But I learned a lot about excellence in KDE, right? I learned how to operate in excellence. So I brought that with me along my journey. Now, what that looks like now is I have reached a point where if I'm going to do things in excellence, I have to get out of the way, right? I cannot do it all. Got a text from a young lady today. Hey, when you talking about this podcast? So now we have someone doing we're launching a podcast.
All right. I've been waiting for that.
Right. I can't do the podcast. So now we have a young lady who's doing it. So I have been forced to ask for help. And it's still a challenge. It's hard for me.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's hard because I've been a one-man band for all these years.
Right.
Like, I still do all my graphics. Still.
And you're really good at them too.
Right. I'm our graphics guy. I am our video editing guy. I'm still doing it. Right. So it's time to let that.
2022 gonna be a whole different situation.
It is. It's a whole nother vibe coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm relinquishing, and they're helping me do that.
I love it. Yep. And I love the way it's like you were still able to grow, step by step by step. But then at each step, you're realizing, okay, in order for this to go higher, then I've got to shift. I've got to make some shifts. Yep. And then every time you get the foundation solid enough, you're positioned and prepared for the next that God has for you. And so 2022 is going to be awesome, man.
The other challenge too is that the standard for me is so high that it's hard for me to bring somebody on because I know what I expect, right? And I can't go back. So that's been the challenge.
It's going to be a lot of letting go.
Yeah.
But also believing God for the right people.
That's right.
Yeah. Because he has the right people.
I need some coaching offline, by the way.
I got you, bro. I always got you.
I need it. Yeah, I need it.
So I am curious to know what some of the biggest stretches have been for you. I mean, and I don't even just mean whether this is over the last 3 years or whatever, but like those things that God had to put his finger on, like, we need to work through this, son. Like, what have been some of those biggest stretches that when you got through that, you saw breakthrough that made a difference, that you began to see the fruit from?
The greatest stretch for me has been how I approach my marriage along with ministry. And here's why. Because with every marriage, you have challenges, right? Yeah. And so when the marriage doesn't reward you like the ministry does, it's easy to turn your attention to the ministry or the business. So my greatest challenge has been character stuff, like focusing on being the husband and father I need to be.
Yeah.
When I started doing that, things began to open up for me. Right. So focusing on making the main thing has been the greatest stretch, but it's been the greatest reward as well.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What were some of the changes you had to make that a reality?
Boundaries. So boundaries. So I have we have 89% women, single women in our community.
89% single women.
89% single, unmarried women. So I've had to really create boundaries. Not that I was ever interested in anybody in this community, right? But boundaries have been key. So boundaries look like my wife making sure she has all my passwords.
Right.
Making sure she can ask me about anything at any time.
Yeah.
And even how I communicate with people. So making sure that there's a group text going out, not just a single. Right. So it's just these type of boundaries have been great.
Yeah, because I note that you said I haven't been interested in any of them, but I know for facts, not because you've told me, but I just know for facts by the nature of you having 89% single women in the audience that they're on the other side. There have been people, cutting up.
And even deflecting comments.
Yeah.
Right. Because I get comments sometimes. This is very transparent. How do you do this? How do you just How do I
get people saying things I don't normally say to people on podcasts?
I've never said this. But I mean, I get comments sometimes, right? And just deflecting those, just kind of making it a brotherly, sisterly. Oh, thanks, sis.
Right.
That's been really effective. And I'm 5'7" with Tim's, right? So you do the math. But it's working out. It's coming together. It's coming together.
I love it. Now, so this is interesting because you did make that comment around marriage. Was there a shift that you need to make as a father as well?
Still making it.
Still making
a shift. Part of the shift is because I was raised without a father. So some things I just don't know how to do.
Yeah.
Coupled with building something for them, right? So it's easier to build something for them than to build with them, right?
That's a whole word right there, because the whole context of this thing is with God, building with God and not just for God. That was a whole subcontext.
That's right. It's the same thing. So it even trickles down into your natural life. So really leaning in and trying to just be very intentional about being available, even when I don't know what to say and do.
How old are the boys now?
14 and 17.
Wow. So you've got 2 teenage boys now.
Yeah, 2 teenage boys. One of them has a girlfriend. Just got his first job. He's about to graduate high school. The other's 14 and really sure about what he wants to do. Right. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Trying to work through it.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. And I just love the fact that it's like with every little shift that you just kind of surrender, every new area that you surrender to, that you would see when you would get that alignment together.
That's right.
Then you were seeing doors open. It was just, which I think, I'm like, that's the goodness of God for real. That's the goodness of God.
It's grace over grind.
Yes, it's grace over grind.
It's grace over grind.
Yeah. People can try like, oh, I'm going to force this. I'm going to force this. I'm going to make this happen or whatever. And you can try that. And it actually may work for you. You know, what you think it's working for you.
Right.
But it's like, but don't do that.
You don't want to do
right?
that.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then you got to try to maintain all that stuff in your own strength.
You don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
So
it's just this is just another example of just like of allowing God to be God in your life and allowing him to set that pace that you're going on and then aligning the things that need to get aligned and then seeing those doors open. Now seeing yourself in rooms where you're like, oh, wow, these are folks I've been looking up to.
I'm like, Shay, this is
how we get here.
How do we get here? What the heck am I doing? This happened to me last week. Like, yo, what are you doing in here? Like, this is crazy. And then now having friendships with people, I'm like, dude, like, what? I got your number on my phone? This is crazy. This is nuts.
I love it. It's so good. So have you already been kind of dreaming around next year? Like, what's your hope for 2022 with Activate Nation? Like, what's on your heart? What's your current stretch?
So my current stretch is getting me together. And what that looks like is getting in shape physically, right? Setting a standard, and becoming more clear and becoming more kingdom driven.
Yeah.
So seeking first the kingdom.
Yes.
What I've realized about this community is wherever I am, that's where this community goes. So if I'm really carnal, this community, you can feel the carnality, right? But when I'm really tapped in, you feel it.
That's good.
So my focus is to get me straight. The other thing is this year, I really want to raise up leaders. So I want to develop coaches so that I can do less of the work, right? And create a platform for them to train so they can go do what God's given them to do. And then the last thing, Shay, we talked about this is so we're planning an event this year, and this is like our first event. And it's a stretch just for me. Like, because
what's the stretch for you about doing an event?
I'm going to explain.
Because I had the same issue. So I'm curious to see whether we had the same issues about doing this live event thing.
Your stretch and my stretch are different. I can guarantee it. Here's my stretch.
Okay.
The last time I planned something, they didn't come to the coffee house. So why would they come to, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting that's the thought.
Yeah. Like the last time you tried to do something and invite people to come, nobody showed up. So the fear is that I'm going to plan this event. Meanwhile, I'm getting inboxes like, Coach, like when is
the event?
Yeah. Can you give me the exact dates of the summit? And I'm still like, okay, well, just those 3 people who asked will show up. Right? You know what I mean? So that's the stretch. Like, will people show up? And they will. But even
they are.
No,
they've been waiting for this to be clear.
Yeah. And so, so that's been the stretch for me. What's your stretch?
Well, my stretch. So we started doing live events in 2019. Before that, the only live events that we were doing were just small, intimate events we call them Igniters gatherings. So it was just people who were within our Igniters mentoring community. You know, we just have a small group of people, big house in Florida, whatever.
No, Shay. No,
that's how we started. And I wanted to stay. I'm going to be honest with you.
There were about 100 something people there.
No. I'm not sure. I don't know what you're talking about. That was probably KDE Live you're referring to, Burrus. I'm talking about prior to 2019. Okay. So now you were at an event. Let me go back because now I know what you're talking about. In 2014, January 2014, in Phoenix, Arizona, there was approximately 40. There was approximately 40 people. Okay.
No, it was more than that, Shay.
Bro, there was like 40 something people that read.
It was like 100 something people.
No, you just feel like it was.
I'm arguing with you on your podcast about your event. I'm going to go ahead and be quiet. My bad.
I'll tell you, there was not 100 people there.
Dang,
so there was really only 4. But if the way God moved, you would think that there was a huge group of people there, but it wasn't. It was a small group. And after that, January of 2014, we never did another live event until I started about 2 years later, I started doing these igniters gatherings, which were in houses, small groups of people who were mentors. The hesitation I had of doing like KDE live, open to whoever will come and all of that. I was just like, what a risk. I got to, I want to believe for a certain number. I got to get a physical thing. I got to put a deposit down. I don't know. It was all the logistics. I'm like, listen, I just wasn't interested in that. But I will tell you know what happened with me? Here's what happened.
I was at a team. Go ahead.
I was at a team retreat and I'm surrounded by people who are mentors on Team KDE. That's before we had a whole operational staff, but I did have mentors on the team. And two of them cried when we were talking about vision and we were talking about the next or whatever. Two of them literally cried over the idea of having KDE live. Like they were like, we have to do this. There are people waiting and praying for this. Like we have to do it. They cried, Burrus. And I had to sit and really look at my own hangups around it and be like, who cares about my hangups around it? Like, this is what God has for us to do. So despite my hangups, we're just going to go for it. And we ended up that first one. It was April. It was in Atlanta, April 2019. There were around 70 something people there, I think. And then we did one in Kansas City, Missouri later on that year in October. And it was around the same amount, maybe a few less than what we had in Atlanta. And then, 2020 happened. So we had to cancel all of our 2020 things. But that was a big deal. Like I actually see numbers way bigger than that. And I think that was kind of scary too. But God in his goodness, we started and I was like, hey, if we get 125 people here, that'll be great. We ended up with 70 something. That was cool. So I just did it. I said, okay, so we can see the possibilities of the future, but instead of feeling like that's where we have to start, let me just start by doing something bigger than what we've ever done before, learn some things so that then we can be positioned and prepared for the next, even knowing that what we see, which is what I was scared of, was the bigness and all the risk associated with it and all the details. But really, that's not what we need to start with.
Yo, I left the podcast. I laid on the couch and just let you minister to me. That's what I need to hear.
Amen.
I need to hear.
And so that was the shift. And I got to tell you, amazing experience. Amazing experiences. I was like, I can't believe we took till 2019 to do this. I'm excited about 2022. Right. And so, yeah, man, I'm glad that ministered to you.
That really set me free. I see the big, but also see even in the small, there's a certain number, right?
Yes.
Like, all right, God, that's what you want to do?
Yeah.
And then their deposits, they're asking for the deposit right now. As we speak.
Man.
Like, I got to figure this thing out.
There's really nothing for you to figure out.
Okay. All right. This is why you're my sister. I swear this is why.
Nothing to figure out. It's like, just open up you already have the dates, open up the registration and keep it moving. Like, okay. That's it.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Y'all, that's going to be a great event. I'm hoping to be there, bro. California.
You better be there.
Next summer. Yes.
July. Yeah.
What's the exact date? July?
The weekend of the 15th, July 15th through 17th. I'm putting a date out there. Shay.
I know you are. That's why I asked. I want to have it on record. July 15th through the 17th.
The Activate Summit. Yeah.
The Activate Summit.
Our theme this year is further, faster, right? That's the focus. I feel like, no, I don't feel like, I know the word of the Lord for me, for this community, and for those who are listening today is acceleration. So God is going to multiply us. He's going to multiply our efforts. What would take people 5 years will take us 5 days. What took people 20 years, take us 20 days. That's the focus, right? So I want to see God do it, and He's going to do it.
Yes.
Thank you, Shay.
I love it, man. So for those who want to connect more with the Activate Nation and with David A. Burrus, where do they go?
Our website is theactivatenation.com.
Theactivatenation.com. And then folks can follow you on various social media platforms. You're pretty active.
Instagram, David Burrus Global, and D. Anthony Burrus on Facebook. And I don't have our Instagram for Activate yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure that's going to be coming. So follow David on the platforms he mentioned. Go to theactivatenation.com.
Yes, ma'am.
And hey, you might want to even head over to California in July.
Yeah.
Burrus.
Thank you, fam.
This was fun.
This is great. I feel like I went through therapy.
Until next time, David, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
I had so much fun at catching up with my friend, my brother, David Burrus. And I have with me now, Mr. Vines, our CEO, and my husband. How's it going, Phil?
All is well, my love.
That's good. So it is time for Phil's takeaways. What really stuck out for you from the conversation with David?
Okay, cool. So I have 4 things here, and I want to preface it by saying this. Like the first 2 are things that almost came directly from what he said. And the last 2 were kind of like thoughts that popped in my head as he was sharing what he was going through this season of development. And so I just wanted to let that be known up front.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't say that. No.
Little upfront disclaimer.
Yeah, that's my upfront disclaimer. So the first thing that I have here is God gives you foresight and insight about your future ahead of you walking it out. And that came from, as he was sharing the story about him writing a book with KDE, right?
Yeah.
And how a lot of the insight that God gave him was way ahead of time. Like he's just starting to walk some of these things out that he already had insight into in advance.
Yeah, so good and so common.
Mm-hmm. The second thing I have here is when you are in alignment with what God has placed in your heart, it becomes effortless in its execution. And so, like, God has called him a pastor, right? And before he was trying to do some of that pastoral stuff in a traditional way. And even when he was thinking a little bit outside the box, it didn't quite happen the way it needed to happen. But now that he's, smack dab in the middle of what God's showing him in his business, God is bringing all that stuff to fruition. And it's effortless. A team is coming and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought that was powerful.
Such a grace and ease and so much favor over that alignment. Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were the 2 things he said that were your takeaways. Now, I think you said these other 2 were thoughts that you had based.
There are thoughts I had as he was sharing. And,
cool.
So the third thing I have here is in order to have God-sized growth, you have to allow God to bring your team and develop you enough to develop the team that he brings to you. So, one of the challenges David Burrus was saying he's having right now is relinquishing some of the things that he has on his plate. There's some things that he really, really likes, and there's some things that he knows are going to be done the right way. But, that next stage of leadership for everyone is to get to the point where you can kind of release your baby to people that aren't going to necessarily do it the same way or at the same level. But that, too, is part of your leadership development, and God wants to develop you through that. So that was a thought that I had, when he shared about that. You want to jump in?
I was wondering if that was a sideline comment to your wife. I'm just playing.
No, but it's true. It's a pattern, though. It's a pattern. Like whenever God is calling you to a higher level, that's the pattern that I've been seeing, right? So, and that was not directed at you, but
I know, but I thought it was.
It is what it is. So. Yeah, you cute with your cute self. And number 4, the thing I have here is true legacy is more about building with your family, not building for your family. I believe during the conversation, he talked about, how he had to like reframe how he was thinking about leaving a legacy for his kids. And now that he's doing more building with his wife and building with his kids. And I thought that was very key, because a lot of times we think about legacy from what we can leave behind, but really the legacy is not, if you leave something behind and you haven't prepared the people that you left behind to be able to steward it, then it's not going to last. So it's not really true legacy.
Yeah, that's good. We keep running into this power of the with factor versus just doing things for, but doing with. Yeah, that's really powerful. I love it. Did we cover everything? Is that all that you
That was all 4 of my points.
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for sharing those. Everybody, we have something pretty awesome coming up next week, starting Monday, January 17th, which is our Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Live Masterclass. So I'm looking forward to doing that. We did this last April, and we're doing that again starting next week, January 17th through Friday, whatever date that is. I think the 21st. But I'm really looking forward to spending some time with all the folks from around the world who will be joining us. It is a free event, but you absolutely need to register to be a part of it. So if you go over to www.kdemasterclass.com, you will be able to register free and join us. We're going to be, it's going to be a mix of some teaching, some live Q&A. There'll be interaction with the community. We got some prizes in store, all kinds of goodness. So come hang out with us the week of January 17th at the live Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Masterclass at www.kdemasterclass.com. Before we go, Mr. Bynes, is there anything that you need to share? Or are we good?
I was going to say with the masterclass, feel free, invite your friends, invite your church cell groups, if you guys,
cell groups, small groups, whatever they call
small groups and stuff like that. Whatever you think it might be a good thing for a particular group or organization that you have to do, then invite them. Feel free. Yeah. It's free, so they can get plugged into.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to just to share something that it's not going to cost them anything, but it at least gets them into this mindset around what it looks like to grow and thrive in doing business in partnership with God. So anybody in your sphere of influence, awareness that you believe would be blessed by this, please pass that on so that they can get registered too. All right, you all, we will talk to you more next week on the next episode of the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. Take care and God bless.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.